Welcome back to the Eric Krown crypto channel. Wishing you a happy and healthy start to this nice Tuesday morning over here as we once again set up the hopefully majority of the cave today and get ready for some very fun action, not just in price action analysis, but also in the new abode as well. Anyways, with that in mind, I wanted to follow up on some higher term time frame ideas first. Also come at this from a different angle with looking at Dixie and then of course the short-term timeframes as well. All of this essentially a continuation of the analysis for the past couple weeks here. So with that in mind, is there any sort of announcements I want to be making? Of course, Instagram been posting a lot of content there, Bitcoin trading, and also just personal stuff as well. There is a link in the description below if you happen to care. And then also Bybit still has their own promotion going on, 0% fees on maker orders, not just for spot price, not just for spot orders, which I believe kind of everyone has right now, but for also derivatives as well. That is only accessible through the link in the description below as well. All right, cool. Let's just jump right into it. Let's start it off right on over here, following up on the same daily signal that we were looking at yesterday for CME specifically. This is where things become a lot more interesting because yesterday we did say that as long as the momentum pivot is maintained, in this case to the upside, well, the next move as far as a statistical standpoint goes is much more likely to be to the upside rather than the downside, and a rather significant move nonetheless as well. So what essentially is a signal? Well, the signal is a volatility versus momentum based signal. The volatility component of this is represented by BBWP right here. And you can see that it is on the ever-loving lows basically since the 29th of September on CME, which is incredibly low. To put this in perspective, we haven't seen volatility this low basically since August and even May of this year. August was that major move down from $25,000 to about $18,000, and May was the move down from like $30,000 to about a $20,000 low or so. So we're talking about big bad moves here. Anyways, whenever we do see volatility at extreme lows, which are defined as anything below 10 percentile or more, the full history of CME has provided an average return off of that signature for about 24.19% move done over the course of about 16 days or so. But if we were to take the first standard deviation of the actual move itself, that'd give us a nice range. So now we can kind of come up with areas of interest when this signal gets fully confirmed, which is actually getting pretty damn close here. So what would it essentially look like? Well, 15% to the 15% on the bottom side of the first standard deviation and about 33.31% to the top side of the first standard deviation. So all of these percentages are essentially areas of interest once we actually do see this move fully confirmed. The stochastic oscillator has been correct in getting the overall direction of the volatility expansion 83.33% of the time. In fact, if you're on this channel back on over here in August, you saw that last move work out, and obviously the one before that, I think these were ones that we were like really loud about over here. And so, you know, you can see that, yes, it does take time, obviously, but pretty fucking big moves, you know, not the time to be getting complacent on price action right now, definitely. Anyways, in this case, the stochastic oscillator, as we defined yesterday, is still meeting the momentum pivot to the upside. So just like yesterday, statistically speaking, this is a lot more likely at the current moment to see an upside resolution than the downside. And of course, that means that we can apply those stats to the upside and come up with areas of interest. The momentum pivot for today is actually the same as yesterday, which is really interesting to me. That's going to be 18,000 and about 600. That means to say that as long as Bitcoin's above 18,600, well, probabilities are risk to the upside actually. And with that in mind, we can now see based off of these averages, and we'll also get to the average days as well, of which I think we already spoke about 16 days. And if we were to take a first standard deviation of that, give us about little over a week to a little over about 3 weeks right here, 8 days versus about 23.5 days. All right, sweet. I'm getting a little bit too wordy right now, but let's take the bottom side of the first standard deviation, take that from when the signal would essentially kind of be populated here. So that'd give a target of about $21,500. That's the bottom side, of course. The average would be about 24%, which would put Bitcoin at around about $23,000, and 33.3% would put Bitcoin at about $24,500. So that would be kind of the order of operations here if we do see this fully confirmed to the upside. So what essentially is confirmation? Need to see the daily BBWP get a positive slope above the moving average, and then preferably the moving average also has positive slope as well. The first condition is absolutely 100% necessary to define actual volatility expansion. The other two are, layers of confirmation that more aggressive traders will probably ignore and more conservative traders like myself will not. So in this case, you can see several examples of this in the past. even in the past year. And this is a full back test for the full history of CME specifically, which is why I really, really like it. It's not a sample, it's full population. Anyways, yes, so the momentum pivot remains 18,600. And then I want to bring up another chart. This is another major CME signal coming at it from a slightly different, a slightly different metric, but we're going to very likely notice some major confluences here. So that means that the daily signal can then bleed into the 2-day signal, which is what we're going to be looking at right here. So this is the 2-day signal for CME, where it is again a volatility versus stochastic momentum signal. Volatility in this case is not going to be done by the BBWP. It's going to be done by the HVP of stochastic volatility, which... what do you need to know about that? What you need to know about it is that it has been pretty well tested, of which I actually don't have them marked off here for some reason, but it should be, when we do see volatility on this, I must have deleted my chart accidentally since we last spoke about it, gets basically below about the 15 reader. So the expansion phases from those extreme low volatility conditions on the 2-day time frame has produced a decently greater move on average than what we saw on the daily for a very similar signature. So in this case, we're looking at about a 39.5% move on average done over the course of 24.5 days, which would be just about 3.5 weeks almost. Stochastic also has been correct in getting the overall volatility expansion direction for 87.5% of the time. And the first standard deviation would give us a range between about 32% all the way up to just under 47%. So I do think that this one's rather interesting here too. What's very interesting about it, in fact, is that, of course, the volatility metric is actually at extreme lows here, and the 2-day stochastic oscillator is currently pointed up. So just like the daily, we don't have confirmation on this one just yet, but you can see that the daily will potentially bleed into this one, producing a very, very powerful signal with higher percentage moves essentially. And then also the stochastic pivot is very close to the daily as well, 18,700. That is to say, as long as Bitcoin is above that level on a closing basis for this next period, probabilities remain favoring the upside actually here. So in this case, if we were to kind of play around with numbers, coming at this from the lower end of the first deviation, then going to the average and then the higher end of the first deviation, what sort of areas of interest would this give us if we do see this confirmed to the upside? Well, 32% puts Bitcoin at about, we already know that one, 24 to 24,500 bucks. 39%, which is the overall average, puts Bitcoin at 25,500, which is basically the high of the summer rally thus far. And 46% puts Bitcoin all the way back up at around 27,000 bucks. So those would kind of be the areas of interest if we do see this confirmed to the upside. So again, how would you get confirmation on this particular one? You just need to see a massively positive slope back above the critical zone. And these should naturally play with each other, both the 2-day and the daily. And here's the thing, while we do still have the 5-day signature that we defined yesterday and have been following up on since it fired off in middle of August, keep in mind that signature will be nullified. I mean, it's not necessarily nullified, like it produced a fucking 25 to 27% move. Like, it's kind of significant, I'd say, but it'll be nullified, implying that there's no more on top of that, given that signal. If Bitcoin closes above $21,000 within the next 4-day period, I believe, as we already kind of expired one of those days. So just, some major numbers to be aware of. What I also want to combine this with is an analysis of Dixie over here, the dollar index. And as always, when it comes to Dixie, it's kind of a delicate discussion because it's not a direct correlation, of course, to, risk on assets. It's a direct correlation to a basket of other fiat currencies, but they do kind of play in that regard nonetheless. And I do believe that we found a local high here. I want to be so fucking clear in stating that, hey, while we have very likely found a local high, long term, I'm talking the next half year to a year, I'm still bullish on this, still very, very bullish on this because of the way that the quarterly closed. But in this case, the weekly is set for a pullback. We do have 1, 2, 3 drives of bearish divergence baking in here right now. That will be confirmed. I mean, if you're aggressive, it's already been confirmed. If you are more conservative like myself, you just want to see a closure here or lower by Friday. And then yes, 1, 2, 3 drives of bearish divergence, high probability, very, very high probability to come back down somewhere around the 21, which is 107.5. And if things really get crazy, then another leg down somewhere around about $1.04 or so, which likely does benefit risk on assets. Probably does. Again, not a direct relationship, but would be in confluence with if you continue to see the momentum pivot remain in play to the upside here for these particular signals. I'd kind of be looking at these playing hand in hand essentially. Again, long term on Dixie, very fucking bullish. So I don't really, we're not talking about like 6 months out, talking about, probably the next month or two. Anyways, in this case, we're also experiencing two extremes on weekly BBWP. Typically major highs or lows are found after a double extreme read on this indicator, especially on a time frame like this, the weekly. It just doesn't happen that often. The last time it happened was literally 2 years ago in 2020. And the time before that was all the way back in 2016, and the time before that was 2015, like, once a year at most, sometimes like once every 2 years. So moving on now into Bitcoin short term, it's the same thing as yesterday. Yesterday I was saying, let me put on my drawing tools. I think it's time to get rid of the LARP lines. They've already played out and it's time to just like let go of them. Yesterday, short term actually was looking first and foremost for a test of the downside, not really based off much anything. So it wasn't necessarily like a setup, so to speak, but going to be wrong on that, or extremely likely to be wrong on that, I should say. I mean, we did kind of get a wick down to 18, just below 18,800, but I was looking for something a little bit lower, about $100 lower. But in this case, these ranges so damn tight. But yeah, definitely going to be wrong about that. Here's the thing though. As Bitcoin does trudge back up in the short term, what essentially would define a range resolution to the upside? Same thing as before. Need to see a 4-hour closure on CME, not on spot, but on CME. Basically here or higher would do it for me short term. Anywhere above, about 19,750, about 19,750. And then I'll probably be looking for another retest somewhere around the 27th of September highs. If Bitcoin can trade above those, and especially even on a 4-hour time frame, close above them, 20,500, then I would be looking for another leg up, about $1,000 higher, somewhere around 21,500. Obviously, that's going to have major confluences with this signal over here, with this signal over here, and that can explode for another couple $1,000 as we looked at regarding those statistics. So I did think that was rather interesting to be aware of. To the downside, it's the same resolution as before. And there is still risk to the downside as long as Bitcoin does not actually confirm this breakout to the upside, which has not happened just yet. But that would be, again, with a higher time frame closure below about 18,100. And we can look at, major moves to the downside. We're talking like 15,000, 16,000 probably minimum, and then potentially lower over time. But for right now, the stats are a little bit more in favor on the upside. Just want to see volatility expansion. So if we run through lower term timeframe stochastic momentum, let's see where the pivots are. And it's actually very similar to yesterday as well. 19,600 on the 12-hour, 6-hour going to be showing 19,300. 4-hour is going to be showing 19,100. And hourly is probably going to be flippy floppy and down if I had to guess. No, it's actually probably going to be up. Yeah, it's up 19,800 or so. So all of them kind of in concert. Keep those relevant numbers in mind. I really don't think it helps too much looking at stochastic momentum on those timeframes. Honestly, within a tight range like this, it really needs to be a range resolution because obviously the 4-hour is going to be expanding, or it is expanding. Like this is the expansion posturing that you're looking for, basically. And it's not just 4-hour; it's also the 6-hour, it's also the 12-hour, it's also the daily, as we defined as well. So likely all of these are going to bleed into each other. Very likely get resolution on this range before end of week here. And of course, if you do see the upside, there's probably a lot more on top of that. And if you do see the downside at this point, then probably a lot more on that one as well. What I'm trying to say is that we're looking at a big move here. Again, keep those areas of interest in mind. I didn't necessarily go over the downside areas of interest. They're just not as relevant right now, statistically speaking, but perhaps we'll do that when it is. So that is a good place to be leaving off on this particular video. I want to be wishing you the best bets as always. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully soon.